Okay, I think we're ready to go. Good morning, everybody. How's everyone doing? Cool. All right, so this is Accounting 2120 Principles 2. So hopefully you're in the right place. And I think we have one person on the Zoom link. And I'll talk about how this course works because we have a few people in the classroom. We have at least one person on the Zoom link. And I'm recording this. And so a lot of people, I presume, are going to be watching this on the recorded version of the video, which you can all do as well, because it's going to be available to you sometime later, probably later today. I haven't taught in this room before, and I'm not familiar so much with this computer setup. I kind of came in last week and tried to get familiar with it. I've done the Attend Anywhere sections before. It's been a while, so it may take me a couple hours to upload it and figure out how to get the video. And I'm going to upload it to YouTube. So and it won't require a password or anything, or even an account or anything like that. So all right, well, let's go ahead and get started. I do want to spend some time talking about what this course is about in terms of format. So everyone hopefully is in the right place. Principles 2, Principles Accounting 2. Everyone's had Principles 1 or some equivalent somewhere else. And when I say somewhere else, I would presume that wherever you might have taken Principles 1, if it wasn't called Accounting 2110, which is what ours is called, is very, very similar across most colleges and universities. So the thing I want to really talk about is the Attend Anywhere format. I don't know if you all are familiar with how this works. If you are, to kind of bear with me for a minute, because I just want to sort of talk about the nature of the access. Not all of our sections are Attend Anywhere. Personally, this is just my own personal opinion. I think it's really the way of the future, and it's the best of all worlds for students, because there are some people who don't like the online environment very much at all when they come to class. I know that's the case. My wife likes that. She doesn't like do online or anything like that. So I kind of get that. Others prefer the online, don't want to come into campus, don't want to park, mess with traffic and all that. And I get that too. So you can, and some can't make it at 10:30 on Monday and Wednesday, and so that's fine too. So you have three different ways of attending class, and those three ways are coming to class at 10:30 to 11:45 Monday through Wednesday, like what you all are doing here, or you can watch on the live Zoom link. I think we have one person, and we may have more jumping on. So you can watch it live on the Zoom link, or you can watch the video that I'll upload a bit later. What I'm going to do is I save this. I'm doing it in Zoom, but then I'll upload it to a YouTube video file, and I'll post a link. It'll probably be later today, probably this afternoon sometime. And so whenever, and it'll be available all semester. So you can go back, look at it, stop it, rewind, whatever. And so this is why I say I think it's really the best of all worlds for students, because it gives you a lot of flexibility. And, this wasn't available when I was in college and graduate school, and I would have liked something like that, because how many times have you been sitting in a class and the professor says something, it's like, what was that? I missed that, and something's gone, it's not coming back, right? I guess you can raise your hand, but some people are reluctant to do that. So this is the way that we access the course. It's Attend Anywhere. So you have these three different modalities. By the way, you're sorted into two sections. I don't know if you guys have all signed that yet. You're sorted into two sections, which I'm not really sure why we do that. One is an online section, one is a face-to-face campus section, but you're not precluded from doing either option. I'm not sure why we divided it into two sections, frankly, because you're all sort of lumped together, and you can kind of go in and out of whichever modality you like. I've had Attend Anywhere classes where nobody attends class. I've had Attend Anywhere sections where most everyone attends class, and they attend fairly routinely. So it really depends upon the interest, and whatever. Every class is different, every section is different. So you can attend however you want to attend. Okay. All right. So I think there's enough on that. And what I do want to do today is I probably am not going to get too deeply into the course content today, and I often don't do that, particularly when we have 15 weeks. In other words, we have a full semester, so we've got really ample time to cover the 8 chapters that we're covering in this section. Actually, one's not a chapter, it's an actual appendix to a chapter, but we've got ample time to do that. But also, more importantly, particularly in the fall and spring, but particularly in the fall, we a lot of times have late registrants, and I don't want to get too far ahead of them. Sometimes people try to register up until the last minute. I know we all are like that. We all sort of procrastinate. I'm certainly guilty of that. And then something goes haywire, financial aid gets hung up, or there's some sort of snag with transcripts or prerequisite approvals or overrides, whatever. So people are oftentimes joining throughout the week. And if I have the time, I don't want to get too far ahead of those students just because, it's not good to start out behind. Okay, so we'll get. I'll just open the door a little bit today to chapter 10, which is the beginning of the course content for 2120. This is the syllabus, and you can access it. By the way, so how do you get to the course site? If you're not familiar with Brightspace, probably most of you are by now, but simply go to the landing site, Principles of Accounting 2, and it'll say AO1, even though you may be enrolled in section AO2, that's fine. But go to, let me bring this over here. And you just simply go to the landing site, and the syllabus is the coursework content. Coursework is really the tab you're going to be clicking on those. Overview and syllabus, and then you can do whatever you like. You can print it, you can download it to your computer. I would personally, rather than print it, I think I would download it to to some device or a computer or whatever, mostly because I will likely change some of the due dates as things get going. And you might say, well, why is that happening? Why aren't you trying to stick to a schedule? And I am trying to stick to a schedule. What's happening though is occasionally we have, I know we're going to have Labor Day on Monday next week, so we're going to miss a day next week. So that's usually this. By the way, the syllabus itself, which I'll talk about here, is sort of it was created sort of by committee, I guess you could say. That's not an unfair characterization. So, there's no real allowance necessarily for holidays and whatnot. So we're sort of, frankly, sort of guessing as to what the schedule might look like throughout the term. So I may change things a little bit, but it's not going to be drastic. And where there is a change, it'll be in your favor. It'll be where something is deferred as opposed to, I'll never move anything up. It'll all be sort of deferred, and mostly because of holidays. Or if we get into a particular chapter where people have a lot of questions and we're doing problems and people have some questions or want to raise points or whatever, I really encourage that. And I tend to have a reputation of having a fairly informal class setting, and so I hope everyone experiences that and knows that you can jump in and ask questions and whatnot. For those of you who are going to watch this video or watching it live, I'm going to be kind of in and out of the screen here, and I'm hoping that you can answer. Hopefully you can hear me, and this is going to be bad if this volume doesn't come through, but I tested it last week to make sure that all the gear was working, and it seems like it is. So Tammy, if you can hear me, if you can just shout out saying, yes, I can hear you, or no, I can't hear you, or well, I guess you can't hear me, you won't know to ask, or type something in the chat box, whichever.
I can hear you.
We only have one person. Okay, I don't know. One second, we only have one person on the live Zoom link, so hopefully you can hear it. But otherwise, but I'm going to be in and out of the screen. So mostly because I'm going to be focusing on the course content, which is going to be up here on the screen. For those of you who are live, obviously you can see it fairly well. It's maybe a little bit more challenging to see on the video, but this is the great thing about watching this sometime later is you can blow it up and watch it on whatever device you like, on your phone, your tablet, computer, whatever you want to do. Okay. All right. So here's the syllabus. Today's the first day we run all. This is a full term course, runs through 15 weeks, 10:30 to 11:45. I guess I probably should have put Monday, Wednesday there. Doesn't matter if you're an AO1 or AO2. Those are mostly arbitrary because you're enrolled in this section, which you can attend anywhere. My office location, I put my Smith Brand. This is my main campus office, which is really sort of my permanent office, I guess you can say. I don't usually teach at the Montoya campus too often, so I don't really have a campus presence here. However, I will have an office hour. It's going to be right after this class, 12 to 1 on Monday, and it's going to be a G201. I didn't actually get an assigned office space. I requested it and didn't get it, so they never got back to me on that. So there's a little common area that I can go, and I'm going to hang out there, if you like, between 12 and 1. All you have to do is just simply come there, and I'll be sort of posted up near the doors. So if you're not familiar with it, that's where the bookstore is. It's on the top floor. You can take the elevator or the stairs. We're right at the top there, and those doors I think are locked. They used to be manned or staffed, I guess is a better word. And they're not now, so you'd have to kind of knock or whatever. But I'll be right there, so you can grab me, and I'll be there. Now, by the way, all my office hours are here. So, and most of them are at main campus. Obviously, I've got office hours here because we're required to have office hours at whatever campus we're conducting class. One thing I'll say to you, and these are all my office hours. So the school business requires that we put all of our office hours there. And so this is all of Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday primarily. I am around on Thursday, but it won't be here on the main campus. One thing I'll tell you is this: I know these office hours don't work for everyone, and if you really want to see me in this, and none of these times or locations, I can see where the location might not work. Then just get with me and say, hey, I need to meet with you, and I can meet you before class, after class, here. I mean, I prefer not to go to West Side campus, but whatever campus you'd like to meet. These times are not. This is not like, the only time I'm ever available. I am mostly available. I've been here for 18 years, and I don't think anybody's ever made the argument that they've never been able to find me, because it just may be if I'm not in class, I'm somewhere else. But feel free to get with me and say, can I meet with you whenever? Or if you want to do a Zoom call, we can do that. That's perfectly fine. Or a telephone call, whatever works for you is whatever makes you happy is good for me. And I'm more than glad to meet with you outside of my regular office hours. A lot of our faculty throughout CNM, as you might know, have other jobs and whatnot. I do not have anywhere else to go but right here. So I am available, even though I am between here and Maine. But on Monday, Wednesdays, I'm here most of the day. And in fact, I was here most of the morning, but I was over in the G building. That's where I should be, even though you won't see my name on the roster there because they never assigned me space. And I don't know who's even supposed to do it, because they used to have like 2 or 3 work study people staffing that, and it doesn't feel like there is anyone there anymore. So I don't know. But it's not a big deal. You can always reach me. There's no problem there. In terms of reaching me, this is my email address here, and it's the best way to reach me is email. It really is. You can call me and leave my extension's 50689 if you call the main number. One thing I'll tell you is if you leave me a voicemail, it's going to roll over to my email. It's an audio file, so I'm going to get it that direction anyway. So it's really the better place to reach me. There's also a facility in Brightspace where you can send it's like an internal email. There's an internal email client embedded within Brightspace, and that's fine. But I prefer just regular email through CNM, mostly because everything is there. And if you've got some kind of, I don't know, some complicated question or something that is an ongoing thing, and maybe I need to loop somebody else in, like maybe my dean or whatever, at least we have a record of what's going on and whatnot. And I'm not saying that to be legalistic, like saying, hey, I said this on this day, you said that on this day. That's not really what I'm trying to get at. I'm just trying to sort of preserve, whatever we're talking about, because I've got 7 sections this semester, and I'm sure I'll have a lot of long-running issues going on. So it'll just help if we do it by email and whatnot. That doesn't mean you can't call me. That's perfectly fine. That's probably the better way to do it. I think, and I'm not sure in this particular course in Brightspace if there's a questions link inside coursework in the discussions area. If there is, you can certainly leave me. I think there is actually. Leave me a note there. I usually put one. I can't recall if I did one. If I hadn't, I'll make sure to do it. You can put one there, and that's a good place to, if you have a question you think everyone else can benefit from, like, hey, I'm having trouble with this problem in chapter 12 or whatever. If you think everyone else can benefit from it, that's a good place to put that. And I try to respond as quickly as possible. If it's during the week, I think you'll find me to be fairly responsive, usually same day or the next day. I've had students sometimes who send me an email at 10 o'clock at night, and then by 9 o'clock next morning say, hey, I emailed you. It's like, if you could just be a little bit realistic on that, I will get back to you. I think in a fairly expeditious time, I think you'll find. Okay. Okay, so I think that we've covered all of these access issues. The text itself, if you took 2110 here and you took it recently, you're familiar with this particular edition of the text. If you took 2110, did you all take 2110 fairly recently? Okay, if you did, you may be familiar with this version. If not, you're definitely familiar with this text. It's embedded within your, if you enroll in the course, you're automatically signed up for this. You may have to go in and register with Wiley, which is the publisher. Wiley Plus is the companion website that has our problem sets and whatnot. And so you want to go in and make sure you can access that. You may still have access from 2110 if you just took it. I don't know, those electronic accesses expire. They all differ across publishers and whatnot. So if yours is still active, you can just go in. It's the same text. It's the very same text. What is different about this is the fact, well, it's 2120. It's really the second half of 2110. So when we're talking about principles of accounting is divided really into two very broad branches. One is financial accounting, which deals with reporting to external users, investors, lenders, regulators, and whatnot, just the general public. And 2120 is managerial accounting, which deals with internal accounting for primarily managers and supervisors and maybe even HR people, whoever are involved and who want that information. So those are two different orientations. You probably have come across that distinction in 2110, but that's what's going on there. And by the way, the first chapter we're going to be covering is chapter 10, which is actually not a managerial accounting chapter. It's a chapter that really belongs in Principles 1, but in order to sort of balance the chapter load and the workload, we simply dumped chapter 10 and rolled it into this one, into this course, just to sort of even things out a little bit. I think there's 18 chapters we covered between the two courses, 9 and 9, so I think that balance was being achieved. So the first couple of weeks, we're going to be dealing with content that's not really financial account, or not really managerial accounting at all. It's going to be financial accounting, and we'll get to that a little bit today. So this is how this is the text you want to access. I believe you can access it out of Brightspace. If not, let me know and we'll work through it. I think your view is a little bit different than mine, so I may have to sort of, hunt and peck with you to try to get to that. But there certainly shouldn't be any difficulty in accessing the text. And if you do have problems, let me know. And for this week, we've got a free like course load. That's good. So you're not going to be too much under the gun in order to do that. Also, you want to make sure you're in the third edition, just because the second edition, it's the same author and all that. But one of the things about these textbooks, if you aren't already familiar, is that they move things around. Chapters are moved around. Certainly, the problems change and whatnot. So those are all different. So you want to make sure you're working with the third edition. So if you have an older edition, second edition, and you're asking, will it work? If you can still get into it, yes, it will work, but it's not going to line up with the problems and whatnot. And you've already paid for this edition anyway. You can choose a loose leaf version if you want to pay for it, but otherwise, most students get the electronic version, and that's, I can imagine, pretty soon one day, most textbooks are going to be electronic anyway. Most of them are already that way anyway. This is the access to get to Brightspace, and so you probably are familiar with that. And so I'm not going to go through line by line on the syllabus, but I do want to sort of cover the main points. Does anyone have any questions so far? Looks like we have another person joining in Brightspace, or in Zoom. That's good. And feel free to shout out. I've been doing it a while. Well, you can call me Tim, by the way. You don't have to call me Professor or anything like that. I am pretty informal as it comes to that. But if you have questions, just shout out. Let me know what's going on. So, and then here's ITS, which is our technical support area. If you have questions or whatnot. Sometimes I know people have difficulty in accessing something in Brightspace or in Wiley Plus, and I am sometimes at a loss to help, and so I may refer you to these guys. They're very good. They're very responsive. Just because sometimes I'm not equipped to answer all the technical questions. If it's pretty basic, I can. Sometimes, though, if people's system configuration does not interface very well, whatever. Apple products, for whatever reason, don't seem to work very well with Brightspace, and with some of the publishers. That's unfortunate. So we usually encourage people to use Microsoft products, or not to use the browser or the operating system. of that one. I'm sure you can get to it, but I think we have run into some issues. They're not as serious as they used to be, but there are some issues there. So I would sort of encourage you to go that direction. Okay. All right. So the prerequisite for this class is 2110. Hopefully everyone's had 2110 or some variation of it somewhere else. If you took it in New Mexico, it probably is actually called Principles of Accounting 1, Accounting 2110, because we a few years ago got together and sort of lined up these numbers so that all these credits can move around and transfer, which is good. These are the things that we're going to be doing here. We're going to first start to talk about some of the financial accounting bits that we didn't get to in 2110. Then we'll talk about the differences between financial and managerial. And after we do that, after we get through chapter 10, it'll be all managerial accounting all the time as we go throughout the course. And what I tend to do is, as we get to a new chapter in the text, and by the way, we're going to cover all the chapters of the text. And the reason, and we're not going to really skip anything, we're not going to add anything. And this course was designed very specifically to include a certain amount of content that is necessary, particularly for anybody who's an accounting major. And I'm well aware that most students are not going to be accounting majors. I'm completely aware of that. However, there are certain things in an accounting certificate that we have accounting certificates as well as an accounting degree, that certain topics have got to be covered, and they've got to be covered sort of in order, and we have to get to them, and not getting to them is actually a big deal. Some of you may be, is anybody in the CPA prep program? Because we do have a CPA prep program. It's usually people who've already graduated and are going back to pick up the credits to sit for the CPA exam. So we do have that. Occasionally we have, over the summer, I had a few students who were involved in that. And that, to those students, they understand exactly why we're covering everything. It's because these are things that will be necessary for those who want to be accounting practitioners. Whether you will be or not is not really an issue. And I certainly do not present the course with the assumption that everyone is going to be an accounting major, because I'm well aware that not everyone is. But it's usually a prereq for most business school programs that come down the road. So this is so these are important topics. We've chosen these and selected these to go in order. And this is one reason why we're picking up chapter 10 from last, well, really belongs in the last course, but we've rolled it forward here. Most people who take 2110 usually will take 2120. There are people who take these as electives. That's fine. I mean, I think I had a brother who took accounting as elective, and he was a music major, and but he found it was pretty valuable to him. He actually gets some benefit out of it. So anyway, you get the idea. I personally think this is very useful information for everybody. This is corporate accounting, and so this is not personal finance, or we're not going to be really getting into too much of like how to balance a checkbook or anything like that, or investments. And so whenever we talk about accounting, we're going to be talking about business accounting and usually with the orientation that we're dealing with a corporation, the corporate structure, and even more specifically a publicly traded corporation. We'll get into some examples of what those financials look like, how to access them, what they're all about. So publicly traded companies are all the companies whose stocks trade publicly in the public markets, all the companies that we know about, GE, Boeing, Apple, all those things. Okay. All right. Well, and we'll talk more about that. Okay. This is what we're doing in the class. We'll talk about week 1, which is a strange week because we've got people coming in probably yet to enroll. I think I know I talked to at least one student last week who's looking to enroll. I was trying to get something together for like transcripts and whatnot. So, and I'm not, scheduling things over one student, but I am understanding the fact that it does happen that people are rolling in late. So we don't have a lot going on the first week, but you do want to do these orientation requirements, because if you don't do it, you won't get any credit. And one of the things about this is we don't have late work built into this course really at all. 2110 and 2120, we just don't have it worked into it. And it was a decision that the accounting department made some time ago. And part of the problem is that accounting is one of those subjects where it's probably a bad idea to get behind, because it's kind of hard to catch up. Stay on pace is really important. And so the idea was not to allow makeup. So you want to make sure you get everything in. if there's something on our end, like an exam goes down or Brightspace goes down or whatever, Brightspace was a little hinky last week but for a very brief time, then obviously that's on us and we'll be accommodative in that regard. We're not, unreasonable by any stretch. But there's no real late work built in. This is not my policy. This is the department's policy. So you want to make sure that you complete everything within the schedule. Having said that, I'll probably adjust some of the due dates. I'll give you ample notice when these are happening. By the way, if the due dates do change, they won't be changing on the syllabus, because as soon as I submit the syllabus to the college, which I have not yet, it's pretty much locked in. So I can't change the syllabus because it's sort of a contractual agreement, if you like. But the due dates may change, and you'll see those due dates change in Brightspace if you're not attending class or hearing that I'm deferring, I don't know, chapter 14 to whatever. And it's not going to be moving up, it's going to be moving back, mostly due to things like holidays, and that's oftentimes what happens. And so I don't make a lot of adjustments to it. One thing I did do was push back the date of the final exam, which was supposed to be on Wednesday, but which is kind of weird because we still have class on Wednesday. So I pushed that back to Friday of the last week. I'll get to that in a second. So let's talk about these orientation requirements. So there's a discussion activity. There are three things to do. Let me just jump ahead here a little bit on the syllabus. And so if we go to week 1 here, so there's you review the Get Started tab. That's under coursework. There's a link called Get Started. It's just got some information that some of it's found other places, but it's kind of all together. There's a syllabus quiz. This is not particularly difficult to do, but it just asks about, you're answering what some of the policies are about. There's a welcome introduction discussion that's found under coursework discussions, or I'm sorry, coursework discussions in Brightspace. Just go in there and, just answer the questions. There's no big deal. There's no research. It's just talk about yourself, that sort of thing. And then there's an academic integrity question. It's basically asks about academic honesty and whatnot. It's just a little activity. So there's not much to do really for this week. Having said that, I would sort of encourage you to get a jump on the reading in chapter 10. So everything's going to be due on Sunday. Okay, that kind of makes things easy. When we have these Mondays, those are when things open like exams. But everything's going to be due Sunday, 11:59 p.m. I think that makes the most sense. Personally, if it were up to me, I'd have everything that had an online component due 11:59 p.m. on Sunday. I think it's sort of becoming the standard across the academic world where things are due Sunday night by midnight, that sort of thing. And I know some classes, even within our department, have things due like at 11 o'clock, and I don't know where that comes from. Or 11:30. It's like, why not just make it 11:59? But anyway, that's when everything is going to be due. So just look to get things done by midnight. You may have some of these are programmed in with like the exams and whatnot. They have like a 5-minute grace period or whatever. So if you're hitting the limit, you'll have a few minutes to wrap up, but not a lot. Okay, so in the first week, that's all we're doing is the orientation. We're going to start. I will start to get into chapter 10 more in a big way on Wednesday. I don't want to get too far ahead of people who are still yet to join. And then we've got quite a lot of time to cover chapter 10, 11, and 12 before our first exam, which doesn't come until week 6, which is going to be the end of September, or actually the beginning week of October. But we'll have activities in the meantime. So on a more or less weekly basis, and it's not really so much by week, and in fact, the modules, which look like this, if you're not familiar with the course site, let me just bring up the Brightspace course site here on the screen. The modules are down here under coursework content, and then they're not organized by week, they're organized by chapter in the text. So orientation is here. This is orientation activities are here. So if you click on that for this week, you're going to see what you've got. That you've got an introduction discussion, which you can also get to by the discussions. Like, so there's 2 different ways to get to any discussion activity. One is out of the so-called learning module itself, which is under coursework content or under coursework discussions. there's a separate link. There's about 2 ways to get to pretty much everything. Syllabus quiz, and obviously everything due September 1st. Academic integrity question. And then there's a nice little orientation checklist you can look at. This is my view is a little bit different than yours, but you can, I kind of like this. You can kind of check things off and it'll tell you what your progress is and all that. Everything else is going to be down here, and you're going to see, and it's going to be organized by week, and you're going to have some PowerPoints, which I'm going to be I've adapted to fit some of the discussion that we're going to be doing in class here, but they're also there. In addition to that, you've got the access to the sections in the text that are relevant to what we're covering. So you want to look at it from that direction there. So it's all on this particular, under coursework. That coursework tab is critical. That's where you'll probably go to as you land. Having said that, I'll probably post every week, well, not probably, I will, an announcement just talking about what's going on. This is our original announcement there. It just automatically posted it at 8 o'clock this morning. I know the school wants us to also email this to everyone, so you're going to see this again today, a bit later by email. So bear with me. They want to make sure everyone is got it, is welcome, feels welcome. We want you to feel welcome and knows what's going on. And you know, there could be, in fact, maybe some people aren't aware that today's first day of class. So, I mean, it is possible. So you'll see it again. By the way, when I set up the Zoom link, I did something kind of wrong. I put every other day, which included things like Fridays and Saturdays, Sundays and whatnot. And I went ahead and deleted those. I got a bunch of emails confirming they were deleted all the way through December. I don't know if you got those or not, but if you did, I apologize. It won't happen again. I don't know what I was thinking, but I just put every other day because this is a Monday, Wednesday, but we don't meet Friday, we don't meet Sunday and whatnot. So you won't see that too often, but I will post the link to every class session here. And I'll probably delete them, but they'll be here for a bit and they'll go away. This link is going to be good for today. This particular link is going to be good for today and Wednesday. I may change it because of the need to sort of change the way I oriented the sequence on those, the sort of the cadence on those. So just look for that, and you can just copy the link into Zoom. You know, there's no user, there's no login. I didn't create any sort of user ID or anything like that. So or password, they're not password protected. So you should be good to go there. Okay. All right. Any questions so far about anything before we get a little bit deeper here? All right. Well, I did want to talk a little bit about, and I will get to sort of the general idea of what we're doing. Because these are not organized by weeks, they're organized by chapter. You've got a sequence that sometimes will involve a discussion activity, and those are coming up a bit later. The only discussion activity for this week is orientation requirement, where you're being asked certain things. Just answer the prompts, just follow the directions. You should be fine. It's pretty low stakes and also low points activity, but there's no reason not to do it. But you'll have other discussions, but it'll be homework quiz, and then there'll be some kind of bonus problems as well. And that's typically the sequence: homework quiz bonus, homework quiz bonus. And they're not due every week, but they are due for every particular chapter. Okay, so kind of keep those in mind. There are no papers involved, there's no group work involved. That's kind of good. These are, and by the way, the homework and quiz are both done out of Wiley. For those of you who took 2110 here, you're probably familiar with it. Not everybody likes the Wiley system. I get it, I do, but we've looked at a lot of different, and we'll probably keep looking at different publishers and publishers' companion sites. The thing that probably bugs people the most is the fact that you got to kind of scroll this way and on and on and on. Then scroll back. Everybody know what I'm talking about? And that's a problem. I don't know what the answer to that is, other than shrink it as small on your screen as you can, or have a gigantic screen, but we can't very well require them to give it a giant TV-sized screen. So I realize it's there, but kind of bear with it and take your time. You're not locked into a time element on this. You can take your time to do that. Okay, so you're not locked in there. We have 3 exams: exam 1, exam 2, and exam 3. They're all online. They are timed. They're all online, and you'll access those in Brightspace. Those are not done in Wiley, those are done in Brightspace, and so you'll access those. As we get closer to that, we'll talk more about it. We don't have a first exam until another 5 weeks or so from now, so we're not, that's the good news about the 15-week sections. We don't, have to go that quickly, and we can take our time and when we have holidays, it's not a serious thing. In the 12-week summer section, sometimes it's a challenge because we have Memorial Day and Juneteenth and 4th of July, and sometimes and we got 12 weeks, and so sometimes we're moving quickly. We don't have that particular problem here. Okay. On the discussions, just make sure, and I'll talk more about the discussions as we get to them beyond the one activity for this week, and I'll talk more about what you should do, and sometimes people do have a tendency to get a little bit overly, I guess, chatty is the word, and kind of lose track and start talking about other things, and I just want to sort of focus on the topic at hand. It's okay to be a little bit chatty. I'm not saying that's unwelcome, but if that's the entirety of the content, that's an issue. So we'll want to talk about that. The homework activity, as we get closer to this, it's available now for chapter 10, but it's not due until I think September 8th, I believe, is when that's going to do. So we've got plenty of time to work through that. And so you can kind of read that for yourself. There's also, and I'm not going to go through all this because I know you can read. I'm just trying to really hit the high points on this. There is a statement there about accessibility and accommodations. If you require an accommodation, you should contact our accessibility services area, and whatever they want from you, they'll contact you and they'll discuss whatever that is. And we are faculty, I can say we're very responsive to those particular things, whether it's requiring extra time on exams or some sort of accommodation. We're very accommodative, but we faculty can't do anything until we get some notification directly from accessibility services. And when we're notified, then we'll be responsive. Okay. What else do I want to talk about before we just kind of jump into a little bit of the content here? There is a point in the semester we'll all send an email saying the last day to drop with a W or without a W. These are two different times. And I will tell you that I tend not to drop students unless somebody has completely fallen off the map and has never attended. And I usually will withdraw the person for that particular reason. I've heard people refer to it as all kinds of things, mercy killing or whatever. I really hate that term, but it's kind of, it does you a favor if you're not attending, because it keeps you from getting an F, certainly, and maintains your GPA, your viability, financial aid, all that kind of good stuff. So if you need to drop. It's not a problem. I mean, it does happen. I think I was in college for 12 years, and so there were times when I had to drop a section. It's not a big deal. But you'll want to do it rather than count on me to do it. But I will do it if you're not attending, just because it becomes fairly obvious that just mathematically you won't be able to succeed. So I'll probably withdraw it. But I will email everybody, usually 2 or 3 days ahead of time, just to say, hey, do you want me to do this? So I bring this up only because some faculty members, and certainly this is the case at UNM, if you don't show up the first day, they'll drop you in like a hot potato and boom, you'll be gone. It's like, I always thought that was a little bit extreme. I really don't want to do that, because it could be very possible that people are not aware today is the first day of class. So anyway, I really do prefer not to withdraw people, so you want to do it on your own. And there are different points of time which you can get a refund, and all that is you're probably more familiar with that than what I am. So, all right, real briefly, I just want to talk a little bit about the schedule here. So for this week, all we're really doing is the orientation activity. I would certainly encourage you to start reading through chapter 10, excuse me, which really, again, is more of a section related, or a chapter devoted more toward financial accounting than it is to managerial accounting. But we are trying to even the workload out. But definitely do these activities. I would just knock these out as soon as possible. There's not much that really needs to be done. Just do them. I've given you until Sunday. I wanted to sort of push it all the way to the end, just because we may have people coming in toward the end of the week, and it takes a day or so to get 7 from Brightspace, so you can knock it out quickly. But we're going to sort of jump into chapter 10. If we are moving a little faster than the pace, I'm not going to get too far ahead. I'm certainly not going to adjust the due dates back on you. If I do anything, I'll be pushing forward to give you more time. And again, we are losing a day on Monday for Labor Day, so that is happening. So okay. All right, and then we'll talk more about the exam. One thing I did make a change here was the final exam is December 6th, or due December 6th. The last day of the semester is officially December 8th. You may have know other people in other sections where the due date was set by the department for Wednesday, which is December 4th. But to me, I'd rather give you more time to do the exam. And yet we do have to, we've got a fairly tight turnaround on grade reporting. We faculty members. So if something goes wrong with your access to the exam or your exam results get dropped, whatever reason, power outage, who knows, right? We've got a couple of days to work with, but not a lot of time. So as we get closer to that, we'll talk about the final exam. But all these exams, we'll have a review session prior to those exams being given. So that'll be really your opportunity to ask questions about anything that you want to talk about as far as the exam goes. Okay, so that's really your opportunity to ask questions. Okay. All right. Any questions for me about anything? And that we're talking. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I've really missed yet.
You said the exams are timed, correct?
I believe. Let me see here. I say I believe. I probably should know the answer to that, but all our classes are different. And let me just take a look here on the. Okay, so the exams. Let me see. All right, so. Let me see. I'm pretty sure they're timed. I think they are. Well, it could be wrong. I'm not. Well, it doesn't say it's on the syllabus. Usually it'll say directly. Let me just go to one of the exams here, and my view is a little bit different than yours. I've sort of X'd these out here because I don't until they're really available. So okay, yeah. So the first two exams, 90 minutes to do the first two exams. Yeah. So those are timed. The final exam, I believe, is longer, and that's also 90 minutes. So yes, they are. Okay. There's 90 minutes, and I believe that there are 40 multiple choice questions. All of those are the same. I'm almost positive about that. Okay, and so that's 90 minutes is I think an adequate amount of time, really. I mean, most people are done before that, but that's certainly possible. Okay, any other questions about anything else? Because I think I've covered pretty much all the high points of everything else. And so what I want to do, I just want to get to a little bit and just make sure that you're familiar. So this week, just kind of familiarize yourself with the course site itself. Everything is available, I believe. Everything's open throughout the end of the term. You can start working ahead if you like. I don't know that it's a great idea, but some people like that and really choose to do that. I think it really depends upon you, frankly, if you want to do that or not. So let me just check the chat box here, which I'll do periodically since this is sort of a live television. Okay, everyone can hear me. That's good. Is it mandatory to show up at the Zoom meetings? It is not mandatory. So you can either come to class physically here at Montoya campus. You can watch the Zoom meeting live as you're doing now, for those of you who are watching live. Or what it looks like most people in this section are choosing to do is to watch the recorded version of this at your leisure, whenever you like. It'll be available, and I'll post the link. And I'll probably post the link onto the main landing site of the as you sign in. So it'll be right there. And it's just a YouTube link. It's not, you don't have to have a password or anything like that. You're able to get on that. So no, it's not mandatory. You can choose to do it, watch it at your leisure. And so hopefully that answers that question. Okay. Any other questions before I get into just a little bit of the content of chapter 10? And I want to just, because we're going to lose a day, I kind of feel like we should use the time to the best of our the best usage, but I don't want to get too far ahead, so I'm probably not gonna go all the way to 11:45, but I do want to get into a little bit of the content of chapter 10. Even though chapter 10 is really not something we're gonna be looking at too much until beginning Wednesday and then also into next week. And we got plenty of time to look at it. But it's a fairly lengthy chapter, and there's a lot going on, so I do want to talk about what's happening with chapter 10. So what I will do in class, and so, I think I started to talk about this and I didn't finish my thought, was that I'll cover, so I know that these modules are organized not by week, but by chapter, and so not every class is organized that way. This course is, and so as we're discussing every chapter, the sequence of events is usually I'll go over some of the content from the chapter itself. I'll use the publisher's PowerPoint slides as a template, but when there's green ink, some of you have taken my class before 2110, that's my own input. And I have other input that I bring into the mix as well. But I'll spend time going over the content, and then I will spend some time before that, the due date of the homework quiz and bonus, and going over some example problems from the back of the chapter. There are some questions that are called adaptive questions, which are practice. They're not for credit. You can take those if you like, or you can work any questions that you like. The good news about the e-text is that there are a whole series of questions in the back of every chapter where you can work it out and then click on the button to get the answer, and then any kind of feedback, and that's a pretty good thing, right? And the fact, I think it's the odd questions that you can get that one for the most part. So that's a good thing for you to use. But we will go over some examples in class, and I try to get a pretty good sampling of the content that's covered in every particular chapter, so that you get a pretty good simulation of what you're likely to see on the homework quiz and bonus. The bonus itself is something that I would encourage you to do. I know that not everyone does the bonus questions, but it really does make sense to do so. I would encourage you to do that. So, okay. All right. Well, let's do this. Let's talk a little bit about chapter 10. Now, chapter 10 itself, again, is a financial accounting section, and really what it is, to be more specific, is sort of an introduction to finance, frankly, because for those of you who may become finance majors or take a finance course in the future, a lot of these concepts will show up again in your life if you do take further classes. And finance is sort of the first cousin to accounting in a lot of ways. Finance majors usually have to take pretty much everything accounting majors take. I mean, probably the majority, if they take the majority of the credits for an accounting degree, only they usually branch off at some point and go a different way, such as toward investments or corporate financial management or something like that, depending on the program that one is in. So this is sort of because this is an accounting course, this is kind of opening the door to what that financial bit looks like. Now, remember, I said in chapter 10, and there are learning objectives that are sort of section dividers that cover different topics within the overall broader topic of the chapter. We're not going to cover the first learning objective. We're going to start with the second objective, talking about financial analysis of ratios. And we'll talk about what those are about. We'll talk about something called horizontal analysis and vertical analysis. And so this is, again, a way for us to look a little bit at the at finance and what finance is all about. This is not a finance course, but there is an intersection between accounting and finance, and it usually comes out of financial accounting itself. Now, remember, as I said earlier, and you now know, since you all took Principles 1, that financial accounting deals with financial reporting to external users. And the format of this is very much uniform based upon generally accepted accounting principles. If you're a US-based company, you adhere to US-based GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, as is pronounced by FASB, the Financial Accounting Standards Board. Okay. Non-US based companies can use the international standards and do and whatnot. But as we get into managerial accounting, we'll see that we've got all kinds of different formats that are used, and that they're used for internal purposes. So it's just for managers, so things can differ. Okay. Having said that, what about these generally accepted accounting principles that apply to financial statements? Well, because these are generally accepted, that is, they're promulgated rules that everybody follows. We all follow the same rules as revenue recognition and recording of receivables and writing off of bad debt and writing off of impairments, all that. It allows us to get a pretty good understanding of what is going on. We can compare two companies, one against another, in the same industry or a different industry, or we can get uniformity as to what's going on within a particular organization over a period of time. So these two different views of financial performance for the external, for view by the external user, takes these two different dimensions, horizontal and vertical analysis. Horizontal analysis is across organizations, one organization against another, and vertical is within the same organization and taking performance into track. Also, horizontal analysis can also be within the same organization, but over time. And that's an issue as well. So let's talk about what's going on here with horizontal and vertical analysis. And we'll get to plenty of examples to talk about these. But when we talk about financial accounting, again, we're talking about the use of financial statements by outside users, external users, investors being an important piece of this, or an important component of those user groups. So what are investors interested in? Number one thing they're interested in is earnings of a company, for the most part. Not every company has earnings, but earnings are a good thing. You know, if you want to stay in business for any length of time, you obviously got to have earnings. And so investors are interested in how earnings are. They don't include extraordinary items or non-recurring items or results from what we call discontinued operations. So there are things that external users do with financial statements that they slice and dice them for their own purposes. My original, before I sort of concentrated on accounting, I worked in banking for a number of years, and before they started learning the actually deal with clients and lending money, that one area that they usually put you in a room somewhere where you spread financial statements, as you get client borrowers, companies' financial statements, and you chop them up, you do things with them, you cut out things, you add things, you do what you want with them. And one of the things we might do is cut out what are called extraordinary items. That is something that is totally unexpected. The criteria for that is something that's unexpected, unplanned for, and is unlikely to recur again. One example would be something like a wildfire, where a lot of the facility has been burned down, and you can't expect it, you can't count on it, you never know. It's out of everyone's control. And I bring this up too because there's one of my colleagues has some property in Maui, and of course Maui had a big series of wildfires, I think a year or two ago, and it burned most of the structures, and also burned a lot of the infrastructure. By that I mean it actually destroyed the roads that were buckled, the power lines were messed up, and gas lines and all that. That would be an extraordinary item. We would not say that's probably going to happen again. Maybe it will, but nobody can predict when, so that would be kind of cut out of the picture, right? So investors are interested in those kind of things. Also, they're not worried about discontinued operations. They may report as earnings, but we don't count them if we're not interested in them because they're not applicable going forward. It also allows comparisons from one time period to the other, both intra-company, that is, intra-company, that is, within a company, and also on an inter-company basis, that is within the same industry, that is, comparing one firm to another. This is particularly important when you have firms of different sizes that are competing against one another. You can use financial analysis to assess performance relative one to the other. And then there are industry averages that are put together, and usually by third-party firms, research firms that put together averages of industry performance so that they can be used as a benchmark. And benchmarking is a very common practice in management. And that is simply this idea of this is where we ought to be based upon the age of our firm, the size of our firm, our position within the market. This is what we ought to hit in terms of, I don't know, return on equity, return on sales, debt to equity, whatever these ratios are. And we'll get more specific as we get into these. But benchmarking is an important element, and it really is a way that we hold managers accountable. And by the way, this is something that may be new to a lot of you because probably most of you probably have worked at places before and have sort of looked at managers as being sort of the bosses. They're sort of untouchable. They're sort of up here. But we're going to present a view of management that you may not have seen before, and that is How do we hold managers accountable? These managers are accountable just like the average worker. And we're going to talk about different metrics by which we hold managers accountable. But they've got to achieve certain benchmarks, certain performance metrics. And if they don't do it, then it's a problem. We need to try to correct it, fix it, or make some sort of change. And these are issues. And when I mean change, I mean obviously a personnel change. That's not usually the first trigger to get pulled. And it's obviously one that most people don't like to do, but it does sometimes have to happen. And so managers' feet are held to the fire. We're going to be talking about different ways by which we can create scorecards, metrics, by which we hold managers accountable for all kinds of things, for costs, for cost percentages, for trends, for waste, for market penetration, for speed and quality, and all these kind of things. All these things managers are held accountable for. And yet we kind of think of managers sometimes as being, kind of hanging out in their office and drinking coffee, and you hear from them when something's going wrong. And unfortunately, that's a not inaccurate view at times, certainly. I certainly have known people in management who have been kind of laissez-faire, kind of blasé in that regard, but nonetheless, there is accountability. We're going to talk about them, and we're going to talk about it first, though, from the sort of big picture standpoint of financial metrics. Okay? All right, real quick, I'm just going to talk about one more thing, and then I do want to sort of wrap it up. But I'm going to talk about this idea of horizontal and vertical analysis, because when we're talking about horizontal and vertical, we are talking about literally how we're looking at financial data or information that's being presented. And so we talk about horizontal analysis, we're usually talking about over a time period, and vertical analysis is usually within some same reporting period, usually for the same firm. And then the third tool is ratio analysis, where we're usually comparing a performance of an organization to the industry or to some other benchmark or something that management itself creates that says by the end of the year we ought to achieve return on equity of 11% or whatever this metric is. And the specific ratios themselves we'll talk about. Or those experienced by a firm's rivals. And sometimes if one of your competing firms is doing better in a particular area, you need to figure out what they're trying to do and then try to at least match that. Okay. Or I say simple accounting logic. Again, the green ink is my own writing there. Simple logic would say that maybe sometimes we have too much debt. Maybe we want to reduce some of that debt in order to make the analysis make sense. Okay, one thing I want to talk about real briefly here is, and just the review here is, remember we have 4 financial statements. In financial account, we have the income statement. Okay. There's the income statement, there's the balance sheet, there is the statement of retained earnings. I'm sorry, this is not much room here, and there's the cash flow statement. Okay. Now, we are not really going to get so much into the statement of retained earnings in this chapter or the cash flow statement. In fact, we really didn't get into the cash flow statement that much in 2110. For those of you who may take further accounting courses, intermediate accounting is where we really sort of tear into the cash flow statement. But we're definitely going to be talking about the income statement and balance sheet. Remember, just as a refresher, what is the income statement? Of these 4 main statements prepared under GAAP accounting, what is the income statement? It captures, it's like a motion picture that captures the activity over a period of time. It's a starting and an ending date. If it's a yearly financial report where the company follows a fiscal year that matches the calendar year, the starting date of the motion picture will be January 1st. It'll end December 31st, and that's what's reflected in the income statement. It's a motion picture. The balance sheet, on the other hand, is a snapshot at a particular point in time. At the end of a quarter, at the end of a year, whatever the case might be, it sort of freezes the action, and it can be useful. There is interplay between all of these statements, one to the other, particularly the income statement and balance sheet. Of these 4 statements, and some of this is subjective, and you could probably get 100 accountants in a room and get a lot of different answers as to what is most important. But I think most accountants would say the income statement and balance sheet have preeminence. And I think that's a fairly safe assumption, because if you look at most financial websites, and I'll give you an example here in just a second, you're going to see an income statement and balance sheet. You probably won't see statement of cash flows, or statement of retained earnings. And between the two, a lot of people believe the balance sheet is the most important. But that's subject to some debate in that regard. As an example of what we're talking about here, I pulled up a couple of examples of companies. If I can bring this over here a little bit. And I pulled up two companies that are competing in the same area. And those are Kellogg and General Mills. Oops. Oh, I can't get out of it because I'm stuck here. So let me see. Let me see if I can do this over here real quickly here. So if you pull up Yahoo Finance, I bring this up only because oh yeah, I do have it up. So Kellogg is now called Kellanova. They made it. I don't know when they changed. It was not long ago. It must not have been because we all know Kellogg's is maker of cereal and whatnot. A vertical analysis would be within the same year. This is 12/31 of 2023. That's the year end. Every calendar year end. You would do analysis of saying, okay, these are the elements of the balance sheet. And one thing about it is they sometimes put things in weird orders here. You can also get into the income statement just clicking on this tab here. Okay, so if you're looking at, and let's just look at the income statement, Kellanova or Kellogg, whichever you prefer. If you're doing a vertical analysis, you're saying, okay, what is operating income as a percentage of total revenue? Okay, that would be an example of how we would use a financial data to produce vertical analysis, or what are total expenses as a percentage of sales or revenue? Sales revenue at the same time. That would be vertical analysis. Horizontal analysis would be, okay, what has been the trend over time? What has revenue done? So if you look at 2020, revenue is 13.7 billion. That went down in 2021 to 11.7 billion. And probably a supply chain issue because of COVID in 2021. And this is one thing that we have to really account for in these horizontal analyses is that we have a couple of years in which things were not normal. And so we have to kind of keep that in mind. And it picked up a bit in 2022, it picked up in 2023. And so that's something we have to kind of consider and make allowances for that particular thing. What might be more useful, and I bring up the cereal company because I think there's an example, that's a long-running example in the book about two hypothetical cereal companies. And so I've got Kellogg's pulled up here. So here would be an example of using, say, total assets. So total assets have actually shrunk between 2020 and 2023. Now the question is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And there are questions. Sometimes these are not easy answers. And the answer is it sort of depends, and it really only depends upon what's the bigger picture. And so we take a variety of different measures, both vertically within a particular accounting period, and also horizontally over a period of time, and also between companies to make comparisons. That's where ratio analysis comes in, and we'll talk more about that on Wednesday. In order to get a big picture, you can't just take one bit of data and focus on that and say that's the whole story. There is something in economics known as the law of small numbers, and that is that there is a human tendency to focus on little bitty bits of information and say, aha, I figured that. When in fact, you get a better view of reality and you take more information. More information is better. And so this is why we have different ways by which we look at financial information. So again, the income statement and balance sheet are the two most critical ones. We're going to focus on these relationships between variables that are discussed and detailed as reported in using GAAP standards so that we can make better judgments. Again, this is still sort of the tail end of the financial accounting piece. We're trying to make this available for external users so they can make decisions. Bankers can make decisions, investors can make decisions, pension funds, insurers, whomever. So that good information can be presented, and there's been a lot of effort made for lots and lots of years to make this information intelligible and understandable, and most importantly, useful, because that's really one of the key criteria by which financial information is considered to be of quality is, can we do something with it? Okay. All right, that's as far as I really want to go today, just because I really don't have time to get into too deeply into the to the rest of the content, but I will on Wednesday. So are there questions I can answer for Anybody? I'm sort of taking a look here at the screen. And by the way, I know for those of you watching in video, I'm going to be kind of dark here just because I want to keep the focus on the screens themselves. But plus, nobody really needs to see me necessarily. But I do want to make sure that everyone is familiar with what's going on. And anybody have any questions before we wrap it up for the day? Okay, well, in the meantime, if you do, feel free to reach out to me. I'm here after class today, and I'm around most of the time on Monday, but I'm always available by email. I'm more than glad to get back to you. So, if nobody has any questions, we'll say so long for today, and I'll see everybody on Wednesday. Okay.
Yes.